Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Bridging the Gap to ITSM Maturity, Insights from the City of Worcester. I'm John Matowski, Executive Director for the Center for Digital Government, and I'm excited to serve as the host for today's webcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to have an excellent session over the next hour. We do have a few housekeeping notes for you on the screen, and we will email a recording of this presentation to all registrants within 48 hours. So please use the recording for your reference or pass it along to any of your colleagues that might find value. Joining me today to discuss this topic are Samantha Sendrowski, Director of IT Administration for the City of Worcester, and Andrew Graff, Chief Product Officer for Team Dynamics. Thanks so much to both of you for being with us today, and I am going to turn the helm over to Andrew. Andrew?
Great. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it. So I'm very excited to have Samantha on with us to talk about the IT modernization processes that the City of Worcester has gone through. And the reason is because I think so many organizations, especially in public sector, city, state, local government, are working towards that maturation. So I think it's just great to have somebody who's been on the front lines and made great progress. So before we jump in, many of you may not be familiar with Team Dynamics. I'm just going to give you an overview really quickly, because that'll give you some context as to who we are. So Team Dynamics is a software company. We provide a no-code service management platform supporting very traditional use cases for IT, for also HR, for legal facilities. So think of it as the service management platform for an entire organization. And the goal is that we're trying to save your people time and improve the service to your customer at the same time. So what does that entail? When if you're thinking about IT service management, everyone's pretty familiar with that. But if you start thinking more broadly about all the work that goes on in an organization, lots of parts of the organization are service organizations. So we work to support IT, and then the other parts of the organization, we also support project portfolio management, which is what's used to create new services or sunset services. And we also think it's very important to have an AI layer involved as well to help improve the quality of service, improve the speed of resolution. In addition to that, there's a very robust integration automation layer, because we also believe that part of the modernization for ITSM and any service management is automating the things that we can that will improve use of our resources, but also improve client satisfaction. So this is going to be interactive today. So we're going to ask some questions throughout, and it's going to help guide the conversation. So first question is, where do you place yourself on an ITSM maturity scale, right? So let me go ahead. There are a couple choices here. You should be seeing this momentarily. So we have basic ticketing, the base level. Hey, we just handle requests. There's no advanced processes. We have implemented a little bit of ITIL. We have implemented ITIL. We also, as part of that, are focusing on change management. We have lots of automation in addition. And beyond that, we bring in ESM, Enterprise Service Management, and AI. So you don't have to be very scientific about it. I would just look at these. One layer resonates or one choice resonates, just click on it. And we'll spend a little bit of time here as people fill this out. And again, this will just help us guide the conversation. So appreciate that very much. Okay, let's go ahead and have a look. All right, so it looks like the largest cohort is we have embraced some of ITIL, including change management, and then we have smaller cohorts at the more advanced levels. Not surprising to me at all. You know, in our experience, most organizations have implemented some parts of ITIL, and you get the question sometimes, hey, do you know an organization that has implemented ITIL? I don't know any organization, I've been at this a long time, that has implemented ITIL, because ITIL is very broad. Organizations implement what they need from the library, the L in ITIL. No one goes to the library and reads every single book, very similar to ITIL. Samantha, does this surprise you at all?
No, it doesn't. And I think when I started here back in 2022, we were at the basic ticketing level. And now we are at what the majority of the group seems to be at, which is we've embraced ITIL with change management, and we're kind of looking at moving to the next phases in that poll.
I think it's a really common refrain. And what I also like to see is that 28%, because I think that there's going to be something in this webinar for everyone, but I really like that there are organizations on that are starting the path you've been traveling. So I think this will be highly valuable there. So when we think about this sort of transformation and need for modernization, what really drove the City of Worcester, right? What were those indicators? What were the results you were looking for? What were the pressures?
Yeah, so I joined the City of Worcester in 2022. And at that point, as I said, we had basic ticketing, really nothing more. So we have moved in that time from a low ITSM maturity level to much more advanced practices. When I joined, all of our processes were very disjointed and some didn't exist in terms of ITSM. Most people here had not heard of ITIL, and I do have a background in ITIL. So things like we had a custom built help desk application, but it wasn't built using ITIL best practices. Our help desk team did get anecdotal feedback that they were very responsive and doing a great job, but at the same time, they felt like they never had enough time in the day, that there were too few resources, but we didn't really have great data to be able to identify areas of improvement or potential issues. We also had very limited employee-facing knowledge base. It was hosted just on an intranet, PDF-based, not searchable, and limited content available there. We were doing some portfolio project management, but it was basically just an Excel sheet at the time. And we were tracking hardware assets and software assets, but across different custom applications and in some cases Excel sheets. And we had no change management program at all. So the biggest challenge for us was really kind of knowing where to start with that. And we did start with change management since it was the least mature, and we felt that there was the greatest risk not having it. So we rolled out the change management standing operating procedures as soon as I came into the city.
Now, it's interesting, do you feel as though, and what we're typically seeing is that without process and technology, the burden on the team is dramatic. So there's lots of manual effort. People are spending a lot of time on things that shouldn't cost them time. And that the demands of IT groups keep accelerating far beyond the increase in headcount. And so that dynamic becomes very challenging. And it basically is pushing a lot of people to a breaking point. I mean, did you feel that?
Yes. Yeah. And I think kind of now that we can see our service desk data better, we can see that more. Just the scope of services has increased so much from when we first built this custom in-house app years ago. The scope of services we offer has increased. But as you said, your headcount doesn't really change, but you can allocate the resources better and offset some of it with that self-service if you're able to identify some of the issues that are coming in.
Yeah. So when we think about process optimization, which I think you've talked about some, often what we're seeing is that when a customer comes to us and our teams are helping them organize the system, it turns out that a lot of the processes need to be updated for the new state of normal. I would say the post-COVID normal with lots of remote work, many more systems that we're using that we need to support. And we get into service catalog reorganization and certain new services or consolidating services. Can you talk about the process that you've gone through, right? How you implemented technology to help with this process optimization, how you look at process optimization at Worcester?
Yeah. So we've been talking about processes and technology, but for us, really, the main focus was on people and kind of understanding where they were coming from, making sure that this is a huge change from our internal team perspective and from the end user perspective. So we really wanted to make sure that everybody within our technology team was involved from start to finish in the processes that they touched today. So it was a great opportunity rolling out this new technology to talk about our processes and initiate those discussions and talk about why the current state wasn't working. And for us, one of the real aha moments for our team was during the service catalog workshop that we ran, leveraging some of the tools from Team Dynamics. We basically had a half-day workshop with most of the team members In it, have to have some people still manning the service desk, but we use sticky notes to capture all the different services that we work on today. And we didn't really have a service catalog before this. So seeing everything laid out visually really helped us to start seeing how everything is connected and just the breadth and depth of everything that we work on. And making sure that that everyone was involved in those discussions and decisions has been really critical to helping us get buy-in and making sure that everybody knows about and also follows the new way of working. And so from there, we started to build out workflows in smaller meetings.
Yeah, I think that's a common pattern that we see out in the customer base is there, and what I really liked, I should have pointed out, was when you said we focused on change management because that's where we saw the risk, right? It's easy to, when you're in a conference room, I think maybe you've experienced this with lots of smart people who want to affect change, to start saying, okay, gosh, we could really boil the ocean here, right? Look at all the things we can do. But to have the focus to say, look, yes, we can do that, but we have organizational change to think about. What is the highest impact change we can focus on, right? And we see that a lot with the service catalog, right? Okay, yes, we can build this enormous service catalog, but look, what's going to be useful to 80% of the users, keeping simplicity in mind? I mean, how did you think through some of those types of questions and challenges?
Yeah, we pulled in some data from our existing help desk application to see what types of tickets we were getting. Again, the data wasn't great. It's kind of like a laundry list of different things before, but we were able to see kind of what the most common things were, so that we could say, and we did use kind of the 80%, the Pareto principle to try and capture 80% of the most frequently asked services. And we started to get into the weeds on something that only gets requested once or twice a year. We said, let's table that. We don't need to do everything all at once. So we really focused on the things that got requested most frequently. And again, our data wasn't great, so we used that as kind of a starting point, and then asked the team, like, what other things do you see? Because again, they're not always being captured accurately in the old system that we had.
Yeah, again, I think you pointed out a really important element to success in these. If you don't have the data, that tribal knowledge and extracting that, right, it can be critically important as well. So I think that's another great point for those who are in the 28% and 16% cohorts, because especially if you have people with tenure, there's so much information and so much knowledge at your disposal there that can be important. If we think about self-service, right, that's another evolution. You mentioned that before, you didn't have a knowledge base, right? Every single ticket was hand-to-hand combat to try to get it resolved, right? Fighting the technology, getting people their answers so they can continue to do their job. With your focus on self-service, right, and building out that knowledge base, what have been the key components of that effort, right? If you're talking to let's assume not everyone on this call has a perfect knowledge base, right? Maybe we're starting from nowhere. Maybe we're starting from a place that we know needs improvement. What were the critical processes that you think were important in technologies?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was we looked at kind of what we did have existing. We did have kind of an internal knowledge base. Essentially, I think everybody here probably has it, even if you're not mature, just a list of documents somewhere in a shared drive. So we did look at that to see what could be end user facing, just so we could start populating it with some meaningful information. And then we also looked at, from our old help desk app, which again, not perfect information or perfect data in there, but we were at least able to get some sense of what are the most frequently asked questions that you could answer with a self-service solution. And for us, setting up multi-factor authentication was something that came in, I think, 50 or 60 tickets a year. That's a very easy thing where we could just direct them to a self-service. So trying to identify things like that. And again, similar to with the service catalog, we tried to narrow the scope so that it was digestible to get it rolled out. We were targeting about 50 articles to start, with the intent of continuing to build on it as we get more and more into it.
So I love the approach of focusing on the highest value, kind of that low drag, right? The low drag items, and then branch out from there. Knowing what you know now, I love this question. I get asked all the time. What would you have done differently? How would you save people time who are listening to you right now?
I feel like we had a pretty good approach. We did have a communications plan to help increase awareness of the portal. So as you're rolling it out, really make sure that you're thinking about end users and thinking about end users too when you're building the service catalog. That was kind of a shift in thinking for us too. Like, how is an end user going to search for this term? Rather than putting it into a very technical term, making sure that we really understood how end users were seeing the world.
Yeah. You know, I find it interesting. I think once again, when you've got a lot of smart people who have been in the trenches with this for a long time, it's easy to overcomplicate. And, you know, one of the I think wisest CIOs that I've worked with, or we've worked with, came into that conference room and said, look, let's assume that we're not going to cover everything in this first cut, right? We can't do it all. But if we target having, like you said 50 articles that are going to address the most time consuming for our internal people and the most frustrating items for our end users. Let's start there and make it really easy to submit a ticket. If they don't find it, don't let them struggle, right? And the other point you made, I think, is really important. It's like, hey, wherever your knowledge is, let's leverage it. So one of the things that I think organizations struggled with for a long time was, hey, our knowledge is in PDF documents, it's on our website, we might have governmental regulations, so some of that's out on a .gov site, right? We have internal Word documents, Excel sheets, all these different things, a wiki. And so I think one of the technologies that's come a long way is a technology called retrieval augmented generation. That is a technology that pairs with generative AI and with conversational AI, where you can say, okay, look, we don't want to extract every answer from our existing knowledge. Let's do the 50 articles where we know we want to have content. Then let's ingest all the other content into a conversational AI platform, and so it can answer the questions, and not just returning an entire article or a link, but excerpts from it. So if I have an employee handbook, those are sometimes I'm sure we've all read ours thoroughly before we signed that we read them. I mean, everyone here, right? Everyone raise your hand if you read it completely before signing it. But deep in there are answers to things, right? Bereavement policies, things like that. Well, that technology can extract just the right article. So what we're finding is that the ability of an organization to leverage its existing knowledge in a valuable way has become far easier and faster. It doesn't remove the need for a knowledge base. To your point, there are going to be certain things we want. So I think that's been a major change in the last 12 months from a technology perspective. Now, another part of this is the curation of the knowledge base. You said something, you said it really simply, like, hey, we're going to build and maintain this and curate it, right? Something to that effect. That I think is critically important. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of what we're starting to do now. So when we first did it, I pulled together just kind of a small team to help build the knowledge base. But since we were ingesting so many like existing documents, making sure that they're kind of formatted consistently, we had a team-based effort on that. Going forward, we're trying to encourage people within our department to build their own articles, and we have a process flow set up for the approval of them so that somebody is just verifying that they're accurate. And then the nice thing about Team Dynamics is it does have kind of the built-in, if you own an article, you can set the review to be a year from now. So we're going to do just an annual review, and people will get reminders when it's time to review their articles.
Yeah, and I also encourage organizations that feel like building a knowledge base is daunting beyond that initial 50, right? I mean, that might be the right number for every organization. Knowledge-centered service, KCS, is a great thing. Easy to train people on, not very expensive to train people on. And basically, the core tenets are going to oversimplify it for time's sake, but every ticket should have a piece of knowledge associated, whether that's an existing piece of knowledge or a new piece of knowledge that goes through a review process. And that way it snowballs and you start building lots of knowledge. And I also think AI is really great here because AI can help attach and find knowledge for those tickets. So I think a lot of things are working in our favor. So we're going to shift gears a little bit to enterprise service management. So we've been talking a lot about Samantha's accomplishments in IT service management, really important, right, for all of us sitting here, I'm sure. But enterprise service management is one of the biggest trends we've seen over the past few years, where it's, hey, the whole organization manages service, especially state and local government. I mean, every single department is serving something, serving somebody. And so taking some of the concepts of managing service management for IT and applying those to other areas. So the question here is, where are you in your enterprise service management journey? So a couple of seconds, you should see a poll come up. Again, don't overthink it. We have not started, meaning we just do ITSM, nothing else. Or you know what, we've expanded to a couple other teams who are heavy service management users, to all the way, hey, we are experts at ESM. You know, we have one client that has over 200 departments on the platform managing service and collaborating. That's at the extreme level. We also have plenty of clients who are just IT, who's starting out, or just a few. So we see it all. So don't be embarrassed. There's no right or wrong answer here. No grades whatsoever. Just being an ITSM might be perfect for your organization, or you may need to be a genius and have all sorts of departments up and running on the platform. So I'll give you a couple more seconds here. And again, you just look at it and pick one. No grades. Promise. Samantha might be grading you though. I don't know. Yeah. We're gonna get a report card at the end. I think maybe both of us will. We'll see. All right. Okay, so it looks like the vast majority are just focused in IT. Well, not vast majority. I would say 56% is a majority. But it looks like people are starting this journey. And I will say that I think We Are ESM Gurus is actually a trick choice. The organizations I know that actually are would never say they are, because they realize how much work there is to do. So I'm glad to see no one said that, because I don't think there are any necessarily ESM gurus. But it looks like we have some people who are maturing. It looks like that seems to be the trend. And again, I think this is going to be a meaningful conversation for those of you kind of thinking about it. So when you think about going beyond ITSM, right? What other departments are low-hanging fruit for Worcester, and how do you see your role as a service management guru in helping these other, or your teams? I'll say, when I say your team, obviously, you're not going to be able to do everything yourself, and you've got a big team to do things. How do you see that role? I mean, what's sort of next in the evolution for Worcester?
Yeah, so I think our role as IT leaders with enterprise service management is kind of the same with all technologies. Our role is just enabling the city to be more effective through technology, and ESM is just a part of that. So as far as our low-hanging fruit, we are actually rolling out to 2 other departments right now. The first is actually the law department, which came to us looking for kind of a project management solution. And it turns out that they also are taking in requests, whether it's like for a contract review internally or a claims request externally. So we thought that this would be a great fit for that. And we are also rolling out an HR portal later this year. Mm-hmm. And that is coinciding with a rollout of a new ERP system where all of our HR and payroll information is going to be stored. So we anticipate there being a lot of questions that would typically come to the service desk for that. But with having this as an option, with a dedicated HR portal, people can ask their HR questions and they can be directed correctly to HR. If there is a technical issue with the portal, HR has the ability to reassign it within it to our team. So it makes it really seamless, and it will also be a really good end user experience. If you have any HR or benefits questions, you can directly go to that portal. We're gonna have a link between the portals too, so that it feels like you're in one environment, even if you're going into separate systems. And we do envision facilities being on the platform in the future as well. I think it's a really good fit for an ESM, having projects and getting constant requests.
Yeah, I love the application for all the departments that you mentioned. I feel like one of the cobbler's children is often legal. Legal gets a barrage of requests. Everything they do, every email that comes in is, can you look at this? Can you draft something? And that becomes so overwhelming. And a lot of these departments are just like, well, I just guess we're going to exist in email, right? And it's a mess. So I love that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really great is that the advancements in automation technology are expanding far beyond IT. So everyone can think about, hey, I want to automate password resets. I want to automate permission changes in Active Directory. I want to automate the creation of Microsoft Teams. And you can think of that list that saves lots of time. But automation can be tremendous in HR especially. So imagine, what's my PTO balance, right? That's a question. Right? That comes from another system. That doesn't come from the handbook. I'd like to enter a day of PTO, right? Or can you talk to me about our parental leave policies? I'd like to schedule parental leave. So I think automation is one of the big opportunities in these non-IT departments as well. So I think there's just, the sky's sort of the limit, if you will, there. Now, shifting gears again, we see a lot of IT organizations who want to manage all the work in the organization, right? So you have your service work, your change, your incident problem, you have people managing operational work, maintenance, et cetera. But then there's the project work. So the bigger things we're working on, and when you think about a project, I mentioned this earlier, but someone summarized this really well years ago, and I've kind of stuck with it. I did not come up with this. But a project creates a new service, fundamentally changes an existing service, or sunsets an existing service. So if you think about it, that's what a project does. So it's integral to the service lifecycle in some way, shape, or form. So can you talk a little bit about the role of project portfolio management and why it was important to have in a single platform?
Yeah, so project portfolio management is incredibly important. When I first joined, I think we had over 100 open projects, and we only have a headcount of about 34 people, give or take. So one of the things we wanted to do is really just be able to see all of our projects, who's working on all of them, and be able to truly prioritize them so that we're working on a more manageable number at any given time and can really increase our time to value. One of the things that I see Team Dynamics helping with more in the future is the resource planning. Right now, we're fairly immature with it. Just having the resources assigned to each project in Team Dynamics has been really helpful to give us visibility in that way. But we haven't really rolled out that resource allocation piece yet. We feel that once we get more mature in project management, we'll get better at estimating our hours and then tracking those actual hours. And that's kind of been the barrier, not really a technical barrier, more of the time to learn that skill. But looking forward with ESM, it will also give us a more holistic view of all projects across the city, which is especially important to us and really to any municipality or government organization, because there's so much cross-departmental collaboration. We have IT projects that are led mostly by another department, if it's a system that's mostly their department. So being able to really collaborate on those things together in a single platform is going to be helpful.
And we find it pretty illuminating. Most clients will start using PPM at a portfolio program level. So, hey, the first step is let's just document everything that's going on that's bigger than operational work. And it's usually jaw-dropping, right? That first list is like, wow, we didn't even know all these things were going on, and pulling our resources. The next step is, well, this is really pulling our resources. So how much time are people spending on this stuff? And then that becomes more illuminating. And then the evolution, if it continues, is typically like, hey, we need to do a better job of tracking the smaller tasks and phases to make sure we're getting things done on time and on budget. And if there's a risk, that we know about it in case we may want to cancel or reappropriate resources. So that is an evolution all in and to itself. So really, really fascinating story. I think that aligns with what we're seeing a lot. So I think one of the big challenges is, if we're going to modernize our service management, what are the must-haves, right? And we've taken this list from our experience, and number one is just low administrative overhead. We're seeing a shift away from incredibly complex systems that require a lot of care and feeding and specialized resources in coding and development, right? It has to be easy to admin, has to support ITIL processes, but not force them. Because like I said, ITIL is a library. It's people pull off of the shelves what they need. And then easy to customize for non-IT groups. And why that seems to be really important is that if you think about enterprise service management, and most of you probably already thought about this, you think, wow, that's really great. It would be great if HR had this, if legal had this, if facilities had this. But wait a minute, is IT going to be responsible for configuring everything? And if they want a field changed on a form or a workflow change, are we going to need to do that? And so one thing that we found early on, we learned the hard way, is that no, it needed to be easy for HR to make those changes. And IT can play a supporting role, but they don't have to do the frontline work, because I can count with no fingers the number of IT leaders I know that say we'd like more to do with the same resources. I literally can count with no fingers. That's 0 times I have heard that. And I think the role of automation plays into that resource constraint too. So these are sort of the things we're seeing. I mean, Samantha, what are you seeing? Like, what were the key considerations when you're thinking about that sort of platform and some of the core elements of what that platform needed to look like or what it needed to support?
Yeah, I agree with all of these, especially the low admin overhead. This is a very much a low code, no code solution. It does take some time to initially get set up, but I feel like Team Dynamics support is great in helping with it. And I am currently the admin of it. So it's really good that it's a low lift. And then for us, really the biggest thing that we were looking for when we were evaluating different solutions was having the ITSM and PPM together, and also having asset management, change management, problem management, all built into the same platform to make it really easy to move between things and link things together. And I think that's been one of the selling points internally to our team too, in switching from custom applications that were built to do exactly what they want to do. Being able to see how everything can integrate together has been helpful.
No, that's great. I think my experience echoes what you're seeing with our customers. So just a quick note about how we as Team Dynamics think about innovation and supporting customers with software. I think that the administrative burden is one of the biggest limiting factors in expanding across an organization. And I also, with that, I think what's really critical is that the solution offers still a lot of flexibility and a lot of power. So you've got this really challenging balance between capability and the need for heavy duty configuration. I think we really focus on trying to be the best mix of that, because there are lots of simple solutions, very simple, that you'll mature out of very quickly, right? Those people in that 28%, if you buy one of those, you mature out of it within 18 months. And guess what? Now you have to go through another implementation. And on the other side of that is, it's so difficult to configure. We're going to need an army of consultants to implement it, and then consultants in perpetuity or full-time staff. That, I think, is the thing that we try to address. I think that's probably our biggest focus, is we want to be the most capable, combined with the best mix of capability and ease of ownership. Now, the other thing too is that, when that happens, like I said earlier, the departments can own their own things. So I've also can count on one hand with no fingers the times I've heard an HR leader say, "Oh, I'd love to wait on IT to make a change to our business process when I need it. That would be awesome to have to put in that request and wait for somebody to get to it." Never heard that before, right? So allowing them to make those changes is really, really powerful, because they develop ownership. They don't need to become software developers. And the goal here is that we monitor what our customers are doing very thoroughly. The requests that come in, we look at what's going on in the market. We look at new technologies. I mentioned retrieval augmented generation. As soon as that technology was viable, we thought, wow, this is a really big deal to help people have a valuable self-service experience without having to build a bunch of knowledge. Amazing technology. So we'll try to bring those things into the fold too from an innovation perspective. So another question, what is your ITSM platform? What are you using today? All right, it could be one of these 5 or other, right? So this one should be easy unless you have multiple, which happens. So if you have multiple, just choose the one that is prominent in the organization. So I'll let you all spend a second on this. And this also gives us an idea of, from a process maturity standpoint, where you might stand on that spectrum. So I see a couple people are filling this out. Give you all some more time as well. And Samantha, it's interesting. How did you combat, because it always happens when a piece of software has been custom developed, right? There are very specific things it does that were coded, and no commercial product does that exact thing. How have you addressed that?
Yeah, we have a lot of custom applications, and so we run into that a lot. I think it's really showing the value of how, what benefit you get from it being a separate application. It also kind of helps that we have the software engineers on our team, and they don't want to support a ton of custom applications. So you have some inherent buy-in, but making sure that it does, really understanding if there is something beneficial to it that we can carry into the existing system. And for some things, that's like making sure that we're capturing assets in the same way that they were before, making sure you capture those fields, which is very easily doable. And in some cases, it might just be people's preferred way of doing things versus there wasn't really a reason. We're just kind of digging into the reason why they wanted that change.
All right. So looking at this, interesting split here. So thank you for filling that out. Very interesting. Looks like we have some Team Dynamics customers, ServiceNow, Avanti, Sharewell, Avanti, and then some Fresh. So interesting, then other 45. So largest cohort is other. All right. So what we've talked about a lot of aspects of enterprise service management, a lot about process and approach, drivers, some of the benefits, and then a little bit about technology. When you think about this is the diagram we use to explain our product. But when you're thinking about a platform, right, you have the service management components, IT service management, non-IT service management, self-service shared across all service organizations, project portfolio management, an AI layer to help automate the process of self-service and delivering service, and then a really robust integration automation layer that can tie into all the systems you use in your ecosystem. Kind of important components. And what we'll be doing here is we'll be showing you a quick demo. And the idea here is that hopefully, if you're going to see something in here that gives you an idea to apply to your existing ITSM solution, and obviously if you're looking for a new ITSM solution, you'll get a little taste of Team Dynamics. But more than anything, it's putting a visual on some of the talking points, so you can take that away from this webinar. And when you think about some key components, if you have a checklist of things to think about, I've provided here. I'm not going to read those, but that being able to spin up new apps without coding, tremendous power yet ease of ownership. In our opinion, combine that with great AI and automation, that's a good platform that you can live with long term as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to one of my colleagues who leads our solutions engineering group, Kaylee, and she's going to give you a little overview of the Team Dynamics product, again, to take some of these concepts we've been talking about and give you a visual. And then we have time for some questions. You can enter questions in the Q&A. So Kaylee?
Yeah, well, thank you, Andrew and Samantha. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we will go ahead and get into it. So we are going to start this little glimpse of Team Dynamics from that end user experience. And like Andrew said, keep in mind that as I move through this, jot down ideas or things that might be helpful, especially if you're on that search for a tool. These might be things that you want to look out for in any of the platforms that you might be evaluating. So when we think about the end user perspective here from what we offer at Team Dynamics is making sure that we can meet those end users where they're at. So keep in mind, we have a variety of ways that we can get tickets into, but one of those central locations oftentimes always comes back right to the client portal. And so we want to make sure that the self-service portal is entirely flexible, but easy to maintain. And so with Team Dynamics, you're noticing here actually a mixture of out-of-the-box modules, like being able to turn on universal searches, or being able to really get creative with the color scheme and the look and feel. And when we think about unifying this view, especially to what Samantha and Andrew were talking about when it comes to thinking through your end users and who you're supporting at your organization, and when you have those other non-IT groups or IT adjacent groups that work really closely with you, your end users have one place to go to be able to put in all their requests or get answers to their questions. And like we've mentioned in Team Dynamics, you can easily spin up a new area for ticketing to be handled by a legal team, and being able to have a new asset application available for facilities to go inside with their work orders that they're managing within Team Dynamics. And through the portal, you can unify these views where you'll notice here in our example, we have a homepage that's just generic, but linking out to those landing pages for those groups who might want very specific information about their about their department, and then link out to those different areas. And so outside of the client portal where users can come to take a look at your service catalog and you have full control over how many categories or visibility or permissions and really tailoring what people can see within here or request within here. And the same applies to the knowledge base as well. Of course, they can search across, look at any knowledge base articles. You have public articles all the way down to deep, deep permissions where only specific subgroups internally might be able to see it. Now, when we think about ways that end users interact, Samantha has talked about being able to leverage things like the portal for that. And of course, they can easily search across the portal and be able to get auto suggestions of articles and services that can help resolve their problem. But keep in mind, too, that as you're evaluating tools, one of the things that we have watched just sweep across the ITSM space and just supporting end users is wanting conversational AI features. And that's what I meant earlier about Team Dynamics always focusing on where we can meet end users wherever they're at. So one of the native functions we have to our tool is full conversational AI with rich integration and automation behind it. And so when we think about those different ways, users oftentimes now will expect that type of instant access. And so keep in mind that our conversational AI not only is natively built in, but can exist on entry points like Teams or Slack or other areas. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a ticket real quick because you're going to follow that internally. And I'm going to walk you through the rest of the tool here. So as an end user in this scenario, I could have the conversational AI piece crawl across the Team Dynamics knowledge base and auto-suggest information to me. And that information can be presented back to me based on if I'm authenticated or not authenticated. And so in this case, you'll see I'm not signed in here. And I can come and ask questions, and it's only going to return results to me that I publicly would have access to, or something that you have specifically built. So I could say something like, how do I connect to Wi-Fi? And it's able to then recognize I'm a public user, look across the Team Dynamics knowledge base articles, and automatically generate a response to me. And so we actually have this connected to some of our internal processes. And so I can easily, as an end user, see this automatically generated response. I can always slide that back in if I want to into the chat window here to get it out of my way. And I can always revisit it. But keep in mind that rich automation and integration piece, especially when we think about all of the different groups like HR and facilities and legal, there might be some actions they can automate with especially the trend in the ITSM space of that swarming or really that shifting left mentality of allowing end users easier access to really quickly get things they need. So in this example, I'm going to say something like, how do I let's see, add me to an Active Directory group. It's a very common one. I managed a service desk for many years, and so it's a very common question we would get. And we used to manually have to handle that whole process. So you'll notice here we have a powerful ability that's unique with our tool that allows you to force that SSO authentication so we can securely know who this person is. And now I'm able to move through and almost completely automate this process. But for things like Active Directory groups, we probably want to get that human interaction of an approval. So as this user, I'm going to go ahead and move through this tailored conversation that you have the ability to create, because I very specifically want to move through this so I make sure that my automations are going to work properly. So I'm going to say that I want to go ahead and still place this request. It's letting me know I'm going to need an approval, and all of this is configurable in our tool. And it's automatically created that ticket. It's letting this user know, and we're going to actually revisit this ticket here in just a moment as we go on into the internal side. Now, as you're considering a new tool or moving to a tool, the things that I really want you to keep in mind are going to be needing the ability to easily report and create a single pane of glass across all types of work. And so as you're seeing here, this is a more micro level view of somebody who is looking at a service desk, maybe wanting to understand all the work assigned to individuals, maybe wanting to understand the customer satisfaction survey results, but always being able to dig in or cross-reference any work that you have in the tool, whether it be tickets, asset records, projects, knowledge-based articles, really anything that you can track within our tool. And so you'll notice here, I can always pivot to something that's hyper-focused, like change management. In Team Dynamics, every single out-of-the-box field and customizable field is not only instantly reportable and filterable, but all of that auto refreshes for you. There's no time to wait between custom reports. Now, when we think about unifying those types of views, especially across those non-IT, keep in mind we have unified views like what you see here, where we might want to keep a track of a process like employee onboarding, where we're seeing what HR has on their plate with it, or what IT has, or what facilities or payroll. So when we work across different groups, Team Dynamics allows that single pane of glass, not to the type of work itself, but also to processes across different teams. And so when we think about just that ticketing functionality, I'm going to pull up that ticket here that we just created from the chat. You'll notice it's automatically bringing in the pertinent information about that user. I have a workflow that's kicked off that's running me through that process. We have an initial automation step. I've got that chat transcript already there, easy for me to access. So powerful tools to track not only service request-based work, but every single classification that would appear within ITIL as well. Now, when we think about outside of the IT ticketing service management, like I mentioned, you can have as many asset applications. You can track all of the assets that you would like within the system, whether it be IT related, like this asset record, where we're using our out-of-the-box native Microsoft Intune integration to just keep everything synchronized and quickly pop on over there if I need to. But when we think about expanding this out across different types of groups and teams, here's an example from the exact same instance where I'm looking at an HR dashboard focused on maybe the projects they're tracking or the work that they're doing and being able to understand the types of questions and ad hoc issues they're solving. And then the same applies with all of these rich features that I've talked about with any group. Like here's facilities as an example. We're using their language, their nomenclature. And as you're looking for a tool and you have those non-IT groups, make sure that whatever tool you're looking at allows those teams to manage their tickets and work in language that makes the most sense. And so for this facilities user, I'm not saying things like incidents or change requests, right? I'm using my nomenclature that's most helpful for us. And keep in mind, things like workflows that are very powerful to help teams move through process can be applied to those non-IT groups, like this key request for facilities that we commonly will see with our customers. And then Andrew had mentioned legal is one of those as well. And we often talk with legal teams. There's many different service-based groups we talk to, but keep in mind when we think about processes like contract reviews or just those simple inquiries, every single type of service-based team can live harmoniously within team dynamics and then allow for things like unified reporting and project management. Now, with the last couple minutes here that I have before we move on and talk about or answer some questions that have come in, keep in mind that when we think about that single pane of glass, it's not just the departments we're looking across, but also the different types of work. And so in Team Dynamics, you can track not just that one-off ticket-based, service-based work. You can also track your operational, keeping the lights on based work. And then, of course, your deeper project management based work. And as an example, a dashboard, you can see how we can deeply and richly report on every aspect of it and giving you flexibility to manage your tasks, whether it be in traditional waterfall style or quick agile ways for easy to use entry points, especially for those that don't have prior project management training. We're incredibly flexible where you can use just little bits and pieces of it to get started and grow as you go within our tool. And then lastly, I wanted to bring everything back together when it comes to the reporting piece. So here's another example of a dashboard. And again, I'm able to report at that micro level, the individual or team member or team, all the way up to the most macro level as well. And it doesn't matter if that information comes from the ticketing side, the asset side, the project side, or anywhere, you can aggregate that together. And when we think about true enterprise service management, the reason why organizations enjoy that single pane of glass view is being able to wrap all of that out into programs and portfolios and being able to see automatically calculated metrics around those different types of work and being able to see how much you're actually spending towards projects or spending towards those tickets as well. And so with that, that is just to scratch the very surface of what we offer here at Team Dynamics. I hope that that's been helpful, at least for those that might be on the search that can look for some of those things you might need. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back on over to Andrew and Samantha.
Great, thanks.
Wow,
Kaylee.
what a powerful tool. Thank you so much, Kaylee. I know I'm not Andrew or Samantha, but we have Andrew and Samantha here with us now and on the screen as well. And let's jump into a few questions while we have a little bit of time. Let's see, we have a question here. We just started our knowledge awareness campaign for the knowledge base and knowledge articles. How did you bolster support and get staff involvement from those who actually have the knowledge so they can create the value add and the knowledge articles?
Yeah, so for us, we started by I knew who in the department had the knowledge, so I pulled them into a room and kind of had them walk me through it and document it real time. As I mentioned, we have about 50 or so articles right now, and we're looking at growing it more. So I'm going to use some of the same techniques that I've used in past roles, where kind of assign each person a set amount of articles per month, depending on their role. Usually it's just one article a month or one article a quarter, kind of giving them a target. And then also making sure that they have time to work on it is important too. So I often, especially for like if we're having the service desk document them, have some time set aside where they know that they can work on this and not have to answer calls during that time.
Okay, another good question here. Do you have any departments like police that are using the platform with criminal justice information systems data? If so, how do you segment the CJIS data from other data?
So we don't have the police department using it right now, so we don't have any CJIS data in there, but that is always a concern. We kind of had the same type of concern with rolling out the HR portal, though. It's obviously not CJIS data, but there's a lot more PII. We kind of encourage people not to share too much personal information on there, but we wanted to make sure that it was locked down to only people that should see that, should somebody put something confidential in there. So we're really making sure that we keep the ticketing for HR separate from the ticketing for IT. So only people that need to see those tickets can see them. So kind of handled it the same way that we handle any type of confidentiality, making sure that it's least privilege.
So if you did have police or some other entity that wanted to hop into the solution, you would just kind of create maybe a separate instance and then only through security and such provide access to those people so that they are the only ones seeing the data. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. With CGIS, it always gets a little bit harder. I might make sure that there's the CGIS addendum attached to it, which to your contract, but I have not done that with Team Dynamics. I'm not sure how that works, but so I recommend if you have any questions on CGIS, just to reach out to your local CGIS rep on that one.
Good call. All right, let's see. Is there a step-by-step document I can read up on for configuring Team Dynamics? We are switching from Top Desk and want to improve on our status quo.
Yeah, so there is a tremendous amount of documentation about the system. We have a knowledge base that gives you insights, and we also have a learning management system, much like you'd have at an educational institution, that allows you to do that. But what I will also say is if a client is starting an implementation, we have a professional services team who will help understand the objectives, the goals, and then work side by side with the client team to configure the environment. So by the end of that, with our assistance, you essentially will become a black belt on managing Team Dynamics. I mean, Samantha, do you want to talk a little bit about the professional services process and the support around go live, your experience?
Yeah, I'll say the documentation is great, but then you also get, as you mentioned, that hands-on support with like a dedicated rep. I think I met weekly with him. And they really keep you on track. You're using a project within Team Dynamics, and there's great training resources available. So you knew that you were always setting it up right. And if I still, as I'm continuing to configure things, as I enter support tickets, they're answered very quickly.
Excellent. I think we have time for one last question. Let's see. Here we go. For Team Dynamics, can external vendors be part of the tool, or is it only for internal use within the company?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Andrew.
Okay,
can you all still hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. So I actually just talked to one of our state and local government customers the other day about this. So Team Dynamics has options if you have those contractors or vendors that you want to leverage Team Dynamics. There's a variety of ways that they can interact. The good news with our tool is oftentimes you don't want to give those individuals your SSO access. And so you're thinking, oh my gosh, well, this is tied to our SSO. We don't want to give them access to our SSO. No worries. We allow you to have full SSO configurations. And then for contractors or vendors like that, you have a backdoor link, and you can actually give them a local Team Dynamics account in tandem with the SSO. And that's how our state and local government customers, or any of our customers that have contractors, are doing that within the tool very easily. And then, of course, we have options where you have unlimited licensing, where it really doesn't matter how many people you give access to the tool.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're going to have to wrap it up here. But in closing, I would just like to, again, thank Samantha and Andrew for sharing their insights, and Kaylee, also great demo on today's webcast. I would also like to thank Team Dynamics for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And last but certainly not least, thank you to our audience, to you, for spending time with us. If you'd like to access a certificate of attendance, please click on the certificate widget in the console menu. And we look forward to seeing you again soon at another government technology event. So thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.